camera. They start to warm up. Oh, there we are.
Yes.
There we are. Yes, I must tell you, the so warm up. The light just come on long time. I don't wait till they're accustomed to it.
Right,
Very slow. Very slow. Yeah. Um. So yes, we'll talk to that psychologist.
yes. Well, clinical
At
therapist
around
and
5:30.
traumatologist. 5:30,
Yeah, he has
he'll
a
be on link with
lot,
it.
a lot.
Yeah.
All right. So he's staying with us for how long? About an hour
Well, he might stay
or
until 7.
half an hour?
No, wait, let me see.
Okay. All right. I
Let
see.
me make sure. Let me make sure. Yeah, he's coming on at 5:30. All right, and well, it seems like he's staying with us right through until 7. I haven't seen that
Also, they
anything.
had no. All right.
Yeah. Well, you know the topic, or the
Well,
topics.
well, one thing about psychologists and these people,
Yeah.
they have no shortage of things to say.
Yeah, I tell you. Especially Mr. Benjamin.
All right. So you'll hold on, but he tends to have some good stuff to share.
Yeah.
To help youngsters, to help not just youngsters, but people in particular in society, and to
Yeah.
help teachers to understand
Hmm.
what is happening with our students and parents with the children,
Hmm. Hmm.
and how they could help them, prepare them to react to certain situations. And I think he has been doing a fine job. So we
Yes.
hear what he has to add on some of the current issues, especially that report.
Hmm. Very, very
It's a
interesting.
terrible report still, yeah. I mean, I would want to ask him off the bat, what should happen to someone for holding such a report for 6 months
Yeah.
before making it public, and you're the person who was and still is entrusted with the portfolio of looking over children and
Yep.
protecting them
Hmm.
from these said types of attacks and abuses,
I tell you.
But some instead want to get into that, just want to deal with how you cater for and how you condition them and the type of psychological assistance they would need and whether they should be given counsel and what age. And
Yeah.
we know all of that. We take all of that. But on this show, we need, deep dives, deep
Yes.
dives
Yes.
into the issues to help us to understand them better and prepare our listeners
Yeah.
to be able to pass the word on in a way that could help this country to move forward.
Right.
So we continue that uh, process. I know we have a number of other things. Mickela isn't on yet. So
Hmm.
until she comes, I'll go back to that story
Yeah.
where um, a lot of funds. You remember what you wrote down?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go to that.
Yes, Sam. After 7 years, what happened to all the
Yeah.
gains?
Hmm. So, folks, 7 years, 7 years of a mixture of restructuring,
Hmm.
attempts to stabilize.
Yeah.
I give that the first 2.5, I extended to 3 years. 3 years. But before the 3 years expired and went on into the fourth, oil prices had gone to a place to significantly reverse our situation.
Yep.
The minister decided he didn't intend to increase the size of the budget to make more people a bit more comfortable
Yeah.
and comfortable in the context of their standard of living in this country. And not that the cost of living went down is acceptable, but by increasing the budget to equip some other people to have more disposable income to, to match the cost that they had to incur to maintain satisfactory standard of living
Yes,
in
right.
this country. But instead of that, the minister held fast to maintaining, as Dr. Hussain said yesterday, which he praised him for cutting the budget from around 65, 67 billion to down to about 52 billion on an average every year, the 7 years. which he felt is a good thing, because
Yeah.
what he said he wasn't doing was, as we got gains, he was not adding back anything new which would require more money. So he kept on cutting back. You use smaller budgets, but you have no money really to share. You have no money to ramp up or boost the existing how should I say agencies so that they could respond to the challenges they face, so that people live a better quality of life. That hasn't happened.
Yep.
So the cutting back, while it sounds good on paper, the actuality is less than equally pleasing. We have a political leader of one of the up and coming dynamic parties.
Yes.
She looking absolutely stunning. Look like
Oh,
you know,
really?
yes, no doubt.
I,
I
Afternoon.
think she dropped. I think she
yeah.
dropped political leadership. This might be a part of it too, but she probably went on a runway and demonstrated her beauty,
Oh
and then decided to join us. So
no!
she's saying to the country, as
No!
a political leader, she definitely is the leading looker among. I want to say
Oh,
to Mickela, none look as good as you do. You're the best looking political leader among the whole group of them.
That's not
So
necessarily
welcome.
a thing. Rich, thanks, Rich. Thanks, Rich. Hi, Daddy Mark. Good evening. Sorry for being a little bit late.
That's okay. That's okay.
How are things going?
Well, we're taking it normal,
Yeah.
trying to rumble with the issues as normal.
Yes, yes. I've been going through the newspaper, so I have a few things that I wanted us to chat about. I save the bigger one that's on my mind for a little bit later, but I just tell you something quickly, Rich and Daddy Mark. You know, I had a meeting scheduled to go to Tobago on Saturday. And what ended up happening is that I can't get a flight.
You're serious?
And there's nothing that I can do. And then, of course, I said, okay, well, let's see if we could take the boat. And then what I started realizing is that you have to plan up to 2 weeks, if not 3 weeks or a month before.
To go to Tobago?
To go to Tobago. So then I said, well, you know what? Because I feel so bad to have to, cancel. I said, well, even if we have to take the boat, but they had set the date and time already as it was. And then we had the following weekend is booked completely. Because that's a holiday weekend.
Yeah.
So I was chatting with the young lady who invited me, and I said to her, maybe I should book the flight and then we organize the meeting. All of a friend of mine who works for Caribbean Airlines, she just say, what's the problem? What's going on? Shortage of pilots. A number of them were fired. They don't have enough flights running, but even if they did, they wouldn't have enough pilots. And I just felt to myself, I could imagine how many other people go through this, and people who actually live in Tobago that go through this and having to travel to from. But we had 2 years to kind of figure this out. And now that people want to go and people are traveling more and feeling a bit more brave, you can't get there. Rich, and you had this experience at all?
Well, yes. For example, this record was a surprise to you. I have to go to Tobago tomorrow.
How are you
I
going?
am not yet booked.
Oh!
I will fly. I am telling you, I will fly just as I always do. I'll go on standby.
But you could go on standby. That's correct. That's correct. No,
Yeah,
I don't mind
I'll go on
standby.
standby tomorrow. Yeah.
I don't mind
I always
standby.
get through on standby.
The problem with standby is you're not sure when. So it could be a 2 or 3 hours or 4 hours or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So to actually
You have to set that aside. Yeah.
Yes.
If you're going on standby, you must be able to set aside 2 or 3 hours.
Correct. And then what you need to do is you can't have your meeting in the morning. You'll have to have your meeting perhaps the day after. Just so you don't have people waiting.
Yeah.
What
I did, I've arranged for someone based on an organization that I lead. I arranged for someone out of that organization to go early in the morning and get a ticket that will place me on standby, and then I'll go up around closer to the time I want to travel, and I'll get on around that time. Yeah. And it's a system that has worked because I think Caribbean Airline, in all fairness to them, they seem to use the strategy because they make more money this way.
But that's
I really don't know how they do it, but somebody was explaining the other day, especially, because what happens is when they put you on standby, the people who already had their tickets, right? What happens? I'm not saying it's a racket. What happens is, say you had your ticket, right? And you have to fly 5 o'clock, but you show up 10 past 4.
Yeah.
What they do to you? They bump you off.
Yeah.
And they send through one that they had on standby. No, you had to wait. How are you getting on the next flight? The same ticket? No, you had to go and pay $50 to make that adjustment. And then you go in and standby. They'll guarantee they'll get you up, but it'll cost you $50 more. Now that happens. To see 200 persons per day, from their revenue standpoint, it's not a bad arrangement. Now it's good too, because what it does, people who have their ticket, they know to avoid that the hour in advance. So it's really the late people who want to show up on that hour who would have to suffer that consequence. I don't think it's too much of a big consequence, but here what? The Trini style, most of the people, sometimes if you stand up by that roundabout in Piaco, watch out, it depends on what time, because cars coming around there, men about 3 minutes off the hour. And it's F1 style, you know. By the time they reach the bump off. But that's Trinis. So a lot of us suffer. May I add, I have suffered that over 25 times, you know. They have made some money off of me. No, truly. So a number of us have that problem. And I can't fault the airline for that.
I don't think anybody, you know, is more important than the other person, and anybody, what they have to do is more important than somebody else. But it should be, I guess, because there's no competition, this could happen.
True.
I also think you must have a general idea within your marketing section or research or whatever it is, how many people tend to fly, what the peak seasons are, what the peak days are, what the peak times are, and those kinds of things, and perhaps put on more flights. But then they got rid of how many pilots recently, so then even if you can put more flights on, you then don't have the pilots. And I was just saying, you know, it was 2 years that those planes weren't running, and people had a chance to sit down in boardrooms or via Zoom and make some kind of plan of how to make things a little bit more efficient.
But they are targeting local tourism. How you can target local tourism and you still have this bridge problem?
Yeah.
You still, if it's one thing, they should never be short on this flights. When you go to England and you go into, say, Ireland, Dublin, I forget the name of the aircraft, Lingus, Air Lingus. I don't know if you know Air Lingus.
Yeah, Air Lingus,
Lingus. You could go anytime and get an Air Lingus flight.
Yes.
Because they fly mainly England to Ireland, an hour and 45 minutes, somewhere there, right? You just go, no problem. Ticket, you're on, that's it.
Yeah.
One time. And we can't have a system like that here. And you are right, it's because there's an absence of competition. So what Caribbean Airlines is doing now, they are monopoly. So they can afford to do this because they are the only person which makes them the dominant person or company on the air bridge. So they could do the passengers all manner of things. And just like TSTT did to people in this country years ago, where it's either it had nobody else, it's either you pay or you owe them $5, they cut you. Because they're that big and bad in the business. If you know what I mean, there was no one else to. Now, with Digicel around and others still looking to come on board, and with WhatsApp and these types of free calls, you'll be owing them. You get WhatsApp messages not telling you your bill is in 5 days, this and that. They get softer. So if another airline should come here now to run the same route, and the competition increases, you would hear Caribbean Airline would flip now and tell you, oh, no need to pay more money when you miss a flight. The most will happen, you'll get on the next flight with the same ticket. And they would start to repackage and remarket, and suddenly it will be workable. But now it's not workable. You do it their way or no way. So you had to pay the price, and it's sad. So clearly, if you're going to target local tourists, what is required is to improve that air bridge arrangement, because people locally will be deterred like yourself. Yeah. I didn't think you're concerned about going to a meeting again. You're now considering postponing it. And if you postpone the meeting, chances are you may decide to have the meeting somewhere else instead of having to go through that again. Now what happens? Tobago would lose the revenue that, because surely you'll go to stay somewhere, you might rent a car, you'll buy food on the island and so on. Right. And a number of persons would have missed out on you and your group or whomever you're going to have the meeting. And that's a sad thing. So that they had to get serious. But I know we had Watson Duke on. Daddy Max, see if you could call Watson Duke for us. See if we get a ticket for Mickela to go to Tobago on Saturday.
And but they say I'm pulling rank. I know I must experience. The only way things will change is if I'm able to experience what everybody else is experiencing. No, it's
well, okay. That's true too. That is true too. Yeah, because even he himself said he's gonna live in Laventille and.
Has he gone yet? Has he gone yet?
Daddy Mark, you have seen anything?
No. He hasn't gone there yet.
Is it that he started and they can't find him since he started? Forgive me if you know what I mean. I just joking. Yeah. No word on whether he has started as yet. I'm sure the people in Laventille will take good care of him. And they would admire. I've been there many times, knowing how they operate. They would really appreciate that and welcome it. I think more politicians ought to do that. Sometime you must try to Mickela with your team. I'm going to meet the people.
What exactly is
people say things about people.
I'm not too sure. He's going to stay in Laventille. Is he renting? Is he setting up a tent? Is he going? Where's he going?
No, he's saying he's going to live by somebody.
By somebody.
No, he's just going to live by somebody. He going in and asks to stay by somebody. For a day or two, he might stay in different places because you want to understand their lifestyle, because he intends to fix it. I think it's a very good message. He intends to fix it, and in order for him to do so, he must understand what he's trying to fix. And the best way to understand it is to go and live it. They do this in court.
They do. Yeah. But I think most people understand in terms of a national issue what's happening and what has happened to Laventille. I don't necessarily think you need to live there to know it's been happening since forever. And perhaps Mr. Duke is a Tobagonian, so needs that level of experience that we in Trinidad understand all too well. Me having done lots of different projects and work with great women from Gonzales, go right back. We did many things to do with crime. And so I know exactly what happens there. I don't think necessarily you need to go and live in Laventille to know that it is a deprived community and how many wonderful people live there. And what a very bad name, whether through the media or the level of crime that the community gets. It's the first time I went, I remember being a young girl with my dad. It's actually probably the most prime property in an ironic way in the whole of Trinidad. Mm-hmm. The views.
It's a really nice view.
The views are second to none. So yes, I agree. Again, when you say national issues, and one of them I was going to bring up with you today, that's really, really bothered me a lot. Food prices are on the up again. I don't know if you had a chance to see it. Nutrimix put out a statement, to have it here, that the price of chicken was going to go up, and eggs. And therefore, a chicken, I assume that would have cost $50, will now cost $60. And I think the crisis, the food crisis and people being able to afford food is just getting worse and worse and worse. Every day, Rich, a gallon of oil could change from today to tomorrow when you go to the supermarket. And maybe what politicians need to do is start to go to the supermarket. I've never seen any of them in the supermarket. I go to the supermarket. I never seen anybody in a grocery. Maybe, you know, going into the grocery and seeing the prices themselves and how much things cost. And I thought one of the things that we could discuss, and there's a bigger issue, I think, at hand as well, but about this food import bill. As you must know, it was, I mean, like 5.67 billion a year, something like that, importing food.
Yeah, I think it dropped to just under, I think, 4 billion, 3 something
billion is
billion,
a
was
lot.
more. It's plenty money, yeah. It is plenty money.
And it's a lot of
yesterday
money.
we had one doctor sign.
Right.
Yeah, we spoke about that extensively.
Okay,
and I think he too shared it that we should concentrate on spending more money in developing the agri sector.
Of course.
On the products that we could produce, because as I shared with him, although it's that amount, it's not to say if we start producing, we ramp up agricultural products, it means that that bill will cut by that amount. I say it's going to cut to some extent, because the things that we import, we cannot produce all through agriculture here. There are some other things we import, yeah, and he was able to highlight some of them, which is true. But the point is that the bigger takeaway for him was those products that we import that we could produce here, we should stop importing those and produce them here, and do what we could to ramp up that level of production here to save that amount of forex, and see if we can even reach a place of oversupply of what we produce and gain forex by exporting. Yeah. So I think that was a nice part of the conversation to discuss. But you can't view it as diversification.
But being able to
government. Sure. Yeah.
Being able to feed yourself, we could be able to plant rice. We don't have to eat strawberries. We could have Portugal. We have guava. We have those kinds of things. Promote local, buy local, support local. All of that comes as part of patriotism, which helps the economy, which helps, you know, that's the. I'm not an expert, but definitely I am concerned because I know that food prices are going up. And we still have people, more and more people every day not being able to afford food, which is why, since you discussed that yesterday, I could take us on to the second limb of what I wanted.
No, you put your perspective on it. I was only sharing that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, my thing has always been, you know, agriculture is important. A country needs to be able to feed itself. I believe that. I remember when there was a shortage of rice. I think it was, I'm not sure, forgive me, either the Philippines or was it Thailand? They completely stopped all their exports. They made sure that they could have fed themselves first. Feed your country first. The food import bill at a time when the government is complaining it doesn't have money to still be spending $4 billion on food imports is a lot of money for a country with 1.4 million people. That is a lot of money. And I don't want to go into looking at certain people as profiteers, because we then have the 100%, 200% markup on things anyway. It's just be so nice to change the way things are done and start to produce things ourselves, start to manufacture things ourselves, start to create our own business, you know. Otherwise, we keep on going for the same thing over and over and over again. And it's just for me, it's just something, I know it's no short-term solution, but I think that successive governments continuously come and say the same thing, diversification, etc., nothing happens. But talking about the short term, again, I'll give you a brief thing because I don't know if you would have, or our listeners and viewers would have heard about it, but the 2021 Auditor General report, you know, I love that Auditor General discussion because to me it is one form of accountability for the monies the government spent. On the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, for the period October 2020 to September 2021. So let's look at a year. They focused on 4 grants: food cards, public assistance, and senior citizens pension. So before we discuss it, Rich, I want to give you a few things of what they heard and Dariman, what they wrote.
Yeah.
Several state grants to help the needy and vulnerable were going into the wrong hands. People as young as 27 years old were receiving pension payouts. Beneficiaries of food cards receiving double payments. Important information for the processing of grants were blank on the ministry database. A payout of $886,350 was made to 61 beneficiaries whose national ID didn't correspond with their date of birth. People collecting more than 1 grant. 4 people between the ages of 114 years to 145 years old was appearing on the system. And there's many more, and I don't want to go on and on, but those were those that popped out to me, obviously, because at the same time we were discussing and I was reading that the price of food and eggs and bread and everything is going up. Now, when they asked the minister said she had not seen the report and she would like to digest it. Maybe a Freudian slip, digest it before a comment. That, to me, is, I don't even know where to begin. I don't really know where to begin with that. People can't afford food, but the people who need the food cards are not getting it. This is the Auditor General's report. I assume by now it would have been laid in Parliament, so it's for public viewing. What's your view on that, my friends?
Well, the first thing is, before getting to that, I want to jump back to where you said on food prices. Okay, that'll be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I want to agree with you. Food prices, they're on the move every single day. It's not even like month on month. The sad reality, especially poor people face with today, is that if you go to the supermarket today and a bottle of ketchup is say $10, you cannot be guaranteed that's the price tomorrow.
Correct.
When they come with the money they change the price, you might see that $10.50, and you would still see the 10 on it and assume it's $10 until you go back 3 days later and you see $11.25. And they just keep marching up the road. And I just use ketchup as an example, but it's the same thing with sugar, milk, oil, chicken, and oil, everything. And it's a sad situation. And some people are pretending they are unaware of what is taking place, but they know. They know. I guess they just don't know how to correct it, or they're downright refusing to attempt to correct it. But the situation is becoming quickly out of control if it isn't there already.
Yes.
Yeah. On the other matters there, in terms of the Auditor General report, did he give details? I didn't see it in relation to how many people receiving duplicates of what is being given, not grants.
On the information that was provided, it may have been, but it's a huge report. I don't have it on me at this moment, and I just made some quick notes for us.
Notes on it. Yeah, okay. So I believe that is happening. Yeah, I believe that is happening, but you'd always be better off to know what the quantity is like. Yeah. Because the Auditor General will do what the Auditor report. If it's true, it will come across as plural. Yes. And but in life, some people, and I'm not defending the people who would have done that, but I could understand why some people don't want to do that. And all I could attempt to do is to serve up an explanation for people who may do that. And that explanation is things are so tough in the country now that people are using creative ways to get more revenue in order to take care of themselves. And it might just be a handful of people. But the worst part of it is, a politician would see that report, and then decide to go and say they're tightening the program and they're going to do this and that and the other. And what normally happens as a result of that, they won't get the people who they're supposed to get, but more innocent people who depend on it will be are disconnected from the program. They will end up being dislocated economically. And it is more saddening when that happens. But the Auditor General has to do what the Auditor General has to do. His job is to publish his findings. And that's all he's doing.
And if the Auditor General says, because I read, not this one, but I read numerous reports. They're long, they're lengthy. But once you read a few, you begin to understand the outlay of how the report looks, and he has to say certain things or she has to say certain things. My issue is not, and I understand somebody saying this is not enough for me, or my family is now a family of 10 as opposed to a family of 2, and I need more, and people will find inventive ways. It happens all over the world. My thing always comes back down, Rich, to accountability and transparency, and something. Let us forget the number of people for a second, but we're saying who are collecting more than one grant. But let us look at something as simple as, there's nobody in Trinidad that I know of that's 114 years old to 145 years old, but they are appearing on a system. So let us look now in terms of accountability through the system and making sure that things are set up right. That you're saying that you have people with ID cards, that the ID card and the birth date is not the same. Again, maybe you're right. We can discuss this if we're able to see numbers without the Auditor General numbers, and without, I don't want to call a random number and it be wrong, but what I would tell you is there are many people who I know have applied for grants and haven't gotten them. And what the Auditor General is simply saying, that they have the help that the needy and the vulnerable are supposed to get are going into the wrong hands. And whilst you can't have a 100% perfect system, I think we have to seek to improve on the people that really need the help to ensure that they're getting it. Disability grants, for example. I mean, we are
what was the issue again? What's the issue there again?
Other people were claiming, I can't, Rich, I had to get this for you, Where I put it? Yeah, did I have it? Forgive me. But yeah, there was drama within that grant, drama within, well, how does a 27-year-old get a pension?
No, but if you get a pension at 27 years and it's a guaranteed pension, you cannot help but be successful, because you still have a lot of your working life in you. So you have a pension already that you could invest. You could go on work.
Receiving a pension payout. That's what the report says. Yeah. At 27 receipt. So
if I could get a pension at age 27, I'll be grooming myself to try to live to 100 for sure.
Exactly.
Because the amount of stress you could put aside and just take care of yourself.
But it means the wrong
surely
people
you should be better off.
The wrong people, and to me, I think
no, that's what it means. I'll just be light on it. Yeah. Because you ask a 27-year-old getting pension, and I understand that. And I was responding to that part. But in general, that's a terrible mistake. It's a terrible error. And it's quite costly to the state. Because if you have people that age getting pension, that could only be designed
through an error, obviously.
Huh?
It's a pension payout. Pension payout.
Oh,
So it must have been a payout.
right.
So this is about grants, the disability grant, the senior citizen grant, the food card, and
No.
But it clearly errors.
This wouldn't be a pension. I don't know, you broke up. I missed what you said.
Sorry, Rich. You're hearing me? I find that my internet is kind of going a bit mad. Right. The report, right?
Right, much better. Yeah.
Right. You hear me? The report focused on 4 grants from the ministry, right? 4 grants.
Right.
Food cards, public assistance, disability assistance, and senior citizens pensions, right? The paying out of those grants. That's what the report is about.
Right.
And what they found was, in some circumstances, people as young as 27 was receiving the pension payout. So that clearly was an error. That is incorrect. They're not entitled to a senior citizen's pension.
They're not entitled, not that senior had to be over 65 or 60. 6 or 65.
Well, they've got to change it to 65, but 60, yeah. But my
right
point,
now it's 60. So
correct. Yes. So my thing is, there are lots of these errors going on. And at a time when people are in a lot of difficulty financially, the most vulnerable and needy in society need to be protected.
Yes. Yeah.
And again, I will read and I will get the statistics and I will definitely send them to you. But it has always been a concern, and I'm sure there's a concern throughout the country, that the wrong people are receiving these grants and it's coming into the hands of those who are not entitled.
And what's worse, Mickela, some of the people who are entitled to it, the elderly people, when they receive it, some of the younger people go and murder them for it, take it from them. So it's still ending up in the hands of the wrong people, by and large, one way or another. So all these are problems that the politicians definitely have to dial into deeper and try to come up with potential solutions, if not actual solutions for them. As if not, these groups of people will continue to suffer in a way that they know they didn't bring this on themselves. If you have a grant and it is intended for people in this way, it is the duties the state's own to make sure and have the system in place to prevent duplication, so that one person cannot benefit in multiple ways through different programs. Because at the end of the day, you're going to have the Ministry of Social, welfare. That ministry is supposed to be designed in such a way that from the time you get one person ID card or 2 forms of ID, and they put this person on a program, long ago it had a software program for that called Groupware. Once your name came up somewhere, wherever else your name is, it will show up. So listen, if you're getting pension and you're entitled to that, but you're not entitled to any other grant, if when your name come up for pension, they see a name coming up anywhere else, they know there's a problem here. And they'll call you in and sort that out. Because, and worse yet, if they see you actually receive here and receiving there too, that's not accidental. Because you know, just where your name coming up, you've been showing up and collecting the money.
Correct.
So,
correct.
I mean, why the name can come up
accidentally,
show up accidentally in the 2 places?
Exactly. But say, for example, I like your analogy, because technology, everything is so advanced now that human error can be avoided. I'm not saying that systems don't fall short, but imagine a situation where, and this is what, and I'm quoting, quoting, important information for the processing of grants were blank on the ministry database. Now, Rich, you know this. If you go to fill out any form online, if you go to fill out or book a ticket or a flight or this, and you have to put in passport information, if you do not fill out the, what they call it, the compulsory fields, you can't move to the next spot. You know those
You can't.
words.
In other words, all the things that you're supposed to do on the first page, you can't get to the second page until you finish that.
Correct. Right? So,
Yeah.
so when you go online to fill out these things and for grant or the ministry or the people, whether you fill it out physically, send it to the ministry, and the ministry, they type it in or whatever happens, the reality is your program's supposed to be that it cannot be, it cannot move forward until, of course, the information has been filled out. Again, I leave room for human error, and I leave room for technological glitches, if so to say. But it seems like something has gone wrong within that period of time, especially in terms of the grants. And I feel something should be done about it to rectify it. Perhaps the first thing that needs to be done is that the people who should have gotten their grants should now get it. And the people who didn't get their food cards should now get their food cards. And the people who, you know what I mean? Maybe that's because we must have documentation. So maybe to rectify it before we talk about police and jail and who are to pay back, let us now say that the people who did not or fell out of the system for whatever reason can now get back on.
And I think that is the caring approach that should be taken to make sure those whom the program was intended to take care of or to assist in any way, that they're the ones who are being addressed and their issues being dealt with upfront, to make sure that the benefit that is intended to pass on to them through the program, that it actually gets to them. You know, I think that should be the not just the caring thing to do, but the correct thing to do. You know, because it's because of those people who are in that situation that would have gotten into the minds of somebody to say, let's create this ministry and do these things.
Yes.
And if it was worth doing, then it is worth doing well. If you're not doing it well, then you're stepping on your own message, because you see you need to do it. And after having done it, you're not too concerned about how it works. It seems as though it's good enough just for you to say it's there. But is it working? And the answer to that so far seems to be partly. And then you can drill further. Is it working closer to how it should, or much further away from how it should? And I would think at this time, perhaps it is functioning at less than 50%. In terms of how it was intended and designed to function. And if you're operating under 50%, it means over 50% of the people you intended to take care of, they're not benefiting from the program.
And that's what's bothering.
And you could call that failure.
That's what's bothering me. And again, like I say, I would like the minister to not take, and I know her well, and she's a lovely lady, Donna Cox, not take a defensive approach. Yes, those are things that will have to be looked into in case there was any kind of bubble that we say going on. Let's just say, okay, that has its place and its investigation, and who has to be held accountable, that will happen. But if it is that less than 50%, more than 50% of the people are not benefiting, clearly we have a big issue on our hands, and those people are out there right now needing help. When many of the disabled people, right, many of them are elderly people.
Many of them.
And I think sometimes disabled people, we kind of put some in our head either that they're younger, but many disabled elderly people would not have gotten their grants. I want to know who they are, and I want the minister to give an undertaking. You know what? We are going to ensure that the people entitled are going to get this. That's how we're going to use this report in the most efficient way. And on top of that, what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that this does not happen again. And to make sure that the system is now functioning, to see where it's wrong. But you're looking at over a year, that is just the period that the report covers, that there would have been people who did not receive what they were entitled to.
And that's a long time.
That's a long time.
That is it's a very long time for people who were really depending on this thing to work out for them. It's a very, very long time. And for it to have lasted that long, it speaks to the ineffective approaches that the ministry has taken to ensure that the people who should benefit from this thing, and just how poorly the system have been working, or how ineffective the people who are placed there to run these systems have been functioning themselves. So it's a sad situation. I see it as unforgivable.
Yeah, me too.
What is the sense of designing something and creating it to take care of 10 people, and they have it up and running and only 3 people benefiting from it?
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And if those three people may not even be entitled to it in the first place.
And out of the 3, yes, you're very correct. Out of the 3 who get in, 2 might be
not entitled to it.
Maybe 2 who were not considered and therefore did not qualify to benefit from this program. So then the strike rate is 1 in 10.
Yes.
Benefiting from something that was designed. I mean, come on. So what you are saying, in effect, 90% are being left out. 90% of the people who were intended to be addressed and taken care of by this whole system you put in place, they are left out, and therefore you could conclude that it would have been a waste of money to set up such a system to produce such an outcome.
100%.
So it is terrible. Yeah, but it has been going on for some time, and I would say they had more than enough time to fix this, Mickela. More than enough time. We're in 2022. We're into the heart of technological advancement now. Today, if you have a problem, we have the world today instance, what is required to inform you what went wrong, why it went wrong, how to fix it, what is the requirement to fix it, what you have to do to fulfill that requirement and have it working again. We are here still saying we have to investigate this and investigate that. Yeah. That is not how the new technology has outlined these things. You go in a car today. You no longer go your car giving you trouble. You had a car by a mechanic and they're revving out the engine. You might be the engine, they're throwing thing in the carburetor and the injector, and then they're going running it down, they'll come back and they say, boy, it sounds like it's working good now. I think I solved the problem. It worked good for an hour or 2, and then the problem resurfaces again. And then they carry through the same thing till they get vexed and sell the car. Now today, not as long ago, today, your car give you that problem, it tells you, check your engine sign comes up. And then it tells you there are messages. Yes. The car giving you messages, you know. When they dial into the messages, they're telling you exactly what is wrong with the vehicle. You go and you fix those things, and the car is back up and like new, right? I'm saying that to say where technology has gone to solve problems. Yeah. So how come those things are in existence and we don't have them in the ministries where we should have them to address these problems? Therefore, it speaks to another problem. We know those things exist, but we don't want to acquire what we should acquire to fix these problems. Or you believe you cannot fix the problems. So you have it running as it is just to pretend you have a system in place, but it really not doing what it should be doing. And in so doing, you're frustrating people who believe it's there for them, who showing up every Monday morning to see if things working out for them. And you have in effect made a bad situation completely and terribly worse when you cause poor people who believe something is there for them. And that is a pull factor. So it's pulling them towards it every Monday morning. And when they show up, it has nothing for them. So all you do is frustrate the people, you annoy them, and you hurt them more. Because when they return home, they're still faced with the same problem with less energy, their ankles hurting, their knees hurting, and you have increased their pain. So it's a wicked thing.
They would have spent money to travel. They would have stood up in the hot sun with nowhere to sit down. I mean, torture. Just system, just set up and put in place to torture and to torture people and make their lives hell when it doesn't have to be like that. That to me, I am not in the position and I could feel the frustration.
Yeah. And that's it. This is like, there are people out there when you say they come to you for help. If you only tell them, I was elected before as a councillor, and if you only tell them that when they bring the problem to your door and they meet with the councillor and they tell you what their problem is, and I had a lot of that. Anytime they got me to say yes, you know, it used to happen to me. I had to work so hard to make sure and solve that problem. You know why? This is how I saw it. If I don't solve it for those people, I have made their situation far worse. And here's how. They brought the problem to me. After I heard the problem, I had options and I had decisions to make. Explain to them why I can't do it so that they know they have to go somewhere else to solve the problem. It is not yet solved. The onus is on you to continue the struggle to solve it. That's one option. Two, and if you do that, and you had to do that, that must be the truth. That was me. If I couldn't do it, and that's what I had to tell you, I would tell you that, and I would also try to tell you where you could go that is outside of my remit so that you could solve that problem. That's number one. Two, if I agree to say I'm going to work in this area and fix it, from the time they hear that, what you think they do when they leave your office, they're heading home with a significant portion of their burden lifted in.
Yeah.
They're going home to tell everybody now, I saw the councillor.
Yeah.
And he's addressing the sector. We should hear from him in the next 2 or 3 days. So they start to quietly celebrate that problem. I knew that. So I know to tell somebody yes.
Yeah.
And to not do what you said you would do, you have set these people up to make their situation extremely more terrible. In that, they came to you with a problem. Then you gave them the impression that you're going to fix it. And then they're going home relaxing, believing that their problem is being solved. It's in progress. The solving is in progress. What that did to them, it disarmed them. Instead of they look to turn somewhere else to correct it, you told them indirectly, go home and relax. I'm taking care of it. Now, to not take care of it, all you did was made it worse, because by letting them go home and relax, you denied them that time they were relaxing that they could have used to go somewhere else
or done something. Correct. And
I want to tell you,
it's make me angry about
it. It should, and that is what used to drive me. So I used to be I used to pay attention to problems. Because I know if I say yes, I used to say, Jesus, I have some heavy lifting to do, because they're going home.
Not easy.
You can tell them you want after they believe their problem solved.
Yeah.
To me, I used to try to get it out the way quickly, because the people need it. I saw them as the constituents, as my collectively singular, as my boss. So whenever they came to see me, I used to call them boss man or boss woman. That was to always remind me, these are the people, whether they voted for me or not.
You're one of the few working councillors.
Let's call them boss man or boss woman. Yeah, if I was one.
I think you were one of the few working councillors who knew what your role and responsibility was, Rich.
Well, I may have to say so, but I did come across other councillors whom I work with.
One of the few.
I work with, and they work very hard. One of the few, yeah. And since I'm here, I don't know if you know the name Happy Boris. Was a hard-working councillor.
Yes,
many nights, all through Laventille, trying to solve people's problems. As bad, but sometimes you call man and say, Rich, let go. Well, sometimes it's good to have company to walk through Laventille. It's such a fantastic place. But I would go to him, you know, and we would try to solve some of the audit was outside of the area that I represented. And sometimes he will come to Bataria too. And then there was Anthony Roberts. I don't know if you know him. a member of parliament, former member of parliament. He's now back in local government, the chairman of the San Juan Labs. I
Yes,
felt he was
yes,
a very hard worker
I know,
too.
Mr. Roberts.
Now
Yes.
just for one other name, yeah, there was another congressman I admired for his really hard work in Santa Cruz, genuinely committed individual. His name slipped me right now, it will come to me just now. But Deep Santa Cruz, his name will come to me just now, but he was a senior guy to me, but he was really passionate about the work. So when you say, Councillor Nicholas, yeah, that guy was a hard worker too, and I modeled a lot of what I did as a young man back then. After the way he worked for the people in Santa Cruz, it was really impressive. I went Santa Cruz a few times, and I saw how committed and how people were so pleased when they got what they expected. And to me, that's the best part of representation. You know?
Correct.
When you see how pleasing it is to people who need the support, and when you are able to do something to produce the aid that they need, or the solution to their problems, so that they could move on into the future more comfortably. When you see the joy, that the expression over their faces, when they see, this, sometimes they look at you as a rarity, as though they didn't know politicians could have really done these things, and those things help to push me forward. I tell you, then as a councillor, it was real heavy lifting for me, and it had nothing to do with being a councillor. It had to do with the fact that I signed up for a role, and I told people, well, I grew up disliking politicians. The people in my community would always tell a politician, you grew up as a baby here, and that they use you. My parents, grandparents, neighbors, they tell how they use you. They come, they promise you stuff, and then election come and go on, and the next election. So as a young man, I was conditioned in a way to dislike politicians. So that when I got involved, I didn't want to be seen in the same way I know my family and neighbors saw politicians. So it put an extra strain and burden on me. One, that it was a bit discomforting, but the joy in bringing the solutions to some of those people, it significantly overrode the feeling of the heavy lifting I had to do. Every time I was able to solve a problem for someone and saw the excitement on their face, I forgot what I went through.
Exactly.
To bring it, because it was so rewarding, honestly. And that is what you need in politicians. Today have some politicians who are only engaged in enlightened self-interest. As they get inside, they have a list in their pocket. That's their friends and their business partners. They go in the ministry and what they want. The whole day. Yeah, that's it, about themselves. And then they call a secretary in the constituency and tell them, nah, I can't talk to nobody now. You write them down now. And the urgent one, call man out, tell them what to do. They can't even see the person again. If they're the type of people we have coming out, those people have to develop an eye to spot them and reject them with great ease. Because you must know, I guess that is why Watson Duke is attempting to do what he's doing. Because while I agree with you again, you really don't have to go and do what he's doing to understand how people live and what is required to help them. Because I didn't have to do that. And yet, when I was stepping out as a councillor, it rubbed so many people the wrong way, because they were saddened that I wasn't running again after 2 terms. And I always made it clear, I didn't want to come across too much as being labeled so heavily a councillor, because you may want to run at a higher level, and then people would say, no, he's a good councillor. I know I've seen that happen to people too. I didn't want to be so labeled. You could only be so labeled if you stay in it too long. So I said 2 terms, and that was it. And I came out, and if I ever get back in representative politics, I could guarantee you, I don't think my approach would be too much different from how it was.
Correct.
Except to say that at that level, it could put better systems in place to get the job done without it having to take so much directly from you. Do you understand? But I would steer it in such a way to make sure it delivers the deliverables to the people who's supposed to benefit from it, and that type of thing. So
that's what I don't understand. Sorry, Rich, sorry, we have a delay. We have a delay. You go ahead, my friend. You go ahead.
Yeah, you go ahead. You go ahead. I am on everyday mix. You go ahead.
Okay. What I was going to tell you,
Yeah.
what made me angry, right? The power of the pen, so many of them have. So easy to change. You're a counselor, I'm listening to you carefully and what you're doing and the heavy lifting, and I know what it would have taken from you, and you have those in power, and they are able, and I'm not talking about this government, so please forgive me, I'm talking government after government after government after government, council after council after council. The other day I found myself, because these people were calling and asking, I mean, the road is impassable, it's a horrible landslip and all kinds of different things, and the MP has tried and he's not getting through, so he says, and they're not seeing the councillor. And so I went and I had a look, and I don't have any elected office, right, Rich? But there's always something that I feel like I could do. And not because I am Mickela or the political leader of a party or Mr. Panday's daughter. I always feel that there's something I could do. Wherever in the world I am or whatever the problem is, it's just, you know, where there's a will, there's a way. So I went down and I realized, first of all, you had the people protesting, we want we road, fix we road. First of all, I don't think that kind of politics works anymore. Maybe not. I feel it has to be through discussion and dealing with things. And I probably would have done it in a different way. For starters, the issue is not the road. The issue is an underlying water leak combined with the type of soil in the area. So there's three different things we have to look at to solve it. And it's not going to be difficult, but so that if we go and we fix the road, which is going to be a very big job and going to cost millions of dollars, ultimately the problem will not be solved because of the
other two factors.
The other two factors. Good. Okay. The best that I could do, I said, is make representation for them. All you really need is you need a structural engineer or whatever for people to come down. You know, nobody has gone, and it's been years till the road is almost, if not completely impassable for cars at least. So I'm saying, just send people down. So if that is, I can't fix the road and I'm not a structural engineer. I do have a good friend who is part of our team that I work with, who is a soil specialist, and you'll be able to see on a computer, just by dropping a location, what kind of soil is there. I mean, he didn't even have to physically, you know, sort of come. But you just have to send people down, and WASA has to talk to Works so that Works will go and fix the road and WASA dig it up, and that kind of situation. But when I was just talking to those people, and leaving politics out of this, we're just talking to them that they need some help. When I was talking to them, you know what I felt? They were just happy that somebody was there, want to speak to them, but who would listening to them, because listen, they didn't need a structural engineer to know what was going on. They knew. They could tell you when it rains, what happened. They could tell you how the water is happening. They could tell you when the pavement started, what day, what year the pavement started to fall. And again, so I said, right, if I can write something on their behalf, meet somebody on their behalf, with them, they try to organize, well, then at least I'm doing something, because I physically can't sign off anything to help them. But to just have somebody come and listen and not tell them you need to bun tire in the road, which works in sometimes, I think. But it's been going on and on without just, I'm not sure that the right way is always, well, the PNMs do this or the UNC do this and this one I do that. And sometimes we have to look towards the solution and see how we can get to that position.
I think it's so right.
And some people might say that's not the way, but you as a counselor would be able to know that not every time, yes, we fight, but there are other ways to fight as well. Because ultimately, my job as a politician, as a counselor, as an MP, as anything, is to solve the problem, to make your life better. So if I can help them by making representation, and I'm not talking legal representation, you know, I don't also feel that's the way. Those things come, but, you know, speak to somebody, you know, have a nice documentation of everything that happened. Can you then give it to your engineers? They come and look at it. Let's just start to discuss a date and just get things going.
Yeah.
It's just that
I think
hope.
it's so right.
Yeah.
When they talk about some of the people usually just want someone to listen to them.
Listen.
Some politicians, the constituents or people in general have lowered the bar so much to make a politician come across as being effective. But the politicians we have today, they are so absolutely selfish and uncaring. They fail to even meet that low bar, which is the constituents are still pleased if you come with nothing, but you are able to show up to listen to them. They give you high marks for that, so that they could go around and tell people, I know my MP, I know my councillor, I see him, I see her. They're going to ban, happy about that. The problem's still there, you know. The problem's still there. But at least they know. Yeah. And they're not mad, they're not crazy.
You know,
because
I know
somebody
what's happening. You know?
Yeah.
Very,
so
very,
it's a sad situation. Yeah. I wanted to lead this interview. It looked like Mr. Hanif is on.
Yes, Mr. Hanif Benjamin is on with us now.
So I know you're going to what they did with Mr. Dew. Daddy Ma.
Yes, sir. So, well, Mr. Hanif Benjamin is on, and Mr. Hanif Benjamin, he is CEO and president and clinical therapist and clinical traumatologist at the Center for Human Development Limited. Welcome, Mr. Hanif.
Thank you so much for having me, David, Richard, and Mickela. It is indeed a pleasure to be sitting with you this wonderful Thursday afternoon. And to all my students who are loved on as well, welcome.
Welcome, Mr. Benjamin. Lovely to have you here with us. We were in deep conversation. I thank my co-host Rich for pointing out that you were there. Sorry, deepest apologies for keeping you waiting. How has your day been? Busy?
It's been long, and I'm tired. Trinidad and Tobago have me tired, but God is good, and we have the energy to keep it moving. So
you're smiling and you look in good health, so therefore something's going right, and you're going to enjoy this interview. We're going to have some fun as we close off the evening. Mr. Benjamin, tell me, I've written this down myself actually, that you're the president and CEO, and you're a clinical therapist and clinical traumatologist at the Center for Human Development Limited. I was wondering if you could just tell us briefly what the center does. Please?
So we at the Center for Human Development Limited started in 2013 when I came back to Trinidad after studying and working and upskilling in the United States. I recognized that there was just no job for me, and my levels of skill could be utilized differently. So I incorporated the Center for Human Development Limited, which is a psychological counseling, training and development company, one of the only companies in Trinidad that provide the level of clinical training for people who are postmasters, post-bachelors in the clinical arena. And so we do a lot of training and development, but we are more of a trauma-informed company. I am a traumatologist. So just like you have a specialist as a doctor and this specialist and that specialist, I treat trauma. And so people who went through any form of trauma across the lifespan, I do that. I am also a field traumatologist, so I respond to disasters as well. So I would have gone to Dominica, to Greenville, to earthquake. So I would normally respond to disasters as well. And so that is what we do in a nutshell.
That's great. That's great. So, well, I love that. And I just wanted to make sure we're on the same path, because I'm hoping to get some guidance from you and to give our listeners on something that has been sort of in the media quite a lot now. I know abroad it's been going on for some time, but kind of now getting a little bit of media or prominence in discussion in Trinidad, and that is sexual grooming of children. And tell me if I'm correct. Grooming is when somebody builds a relationship, trust, and emotional connection with a child or young person so they can manipulate, exploit, and abuse them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Would you say that's correct?
It sounds correct. The hope is that you would have been quoting from the act in itself, because sexual grooming in some of the amendments to the Children's Authority and other pieces of legislation act, it was included as a major amendment because of the very nature of what it is. And so we saw historically grooming as a thing. But how did you, and can you capture it in law? So that was an amendment to the legislation. And so it sounds correct what you said, but I will defer to the actual reading of the legislation in relation to the actual definition of it. But in the main, for the man on the street, sexual grooming is where you have taken interest, of course, a power differential, definitely. And when I say power differential, I mean where it's either an adult or a child, a boss or a child, that kind of power differential. And that person is using gifts, whether it is monetary or actual gifts of kind, to a particular child with the intent, to commit a sexual offense. That is the criticality there, with the intent. And so the police have a job on their hand, because you have to first of all prove grooming and by way of donation, gifts and stuff, and then you have to prove the intent. You see?
Before we go to the police, because I know that there'll be parents out there who've been hearing this, who've been listening, and they've been thinking, well, listen, children, as you and I both know, they are a vulnerable, young people, a very vulnerable group in society. Are there any signs in your expertise, you're professional, are there any signs that parents, guardians, grandparents, aunties, uncles, those looking after our young ones can look out for, that we can see?
You made two powerful points, and I wish my class was here, because right? An interesting class in USC, law and social work. So it fits right into the conversation. That is why I was able to say, come on in, let's finish the class online here.
Wow,
right?
Okay.
And so,
I can learn something too.
Yeah, but because two things you point out of great criticality here. Vulnerable group. A vulnerable group is a group of people who cannot look after themselves, who need that protection. And the second thing you said is for the people who are looking out or looking after those children. One of the things that I found when I was at that place in my tenure, the Children's Authority, one of the things that always resonated with me, even before that, is what do we consider to be looking after the children? Throw an eye. We always tell a neighbor, going on, throw an eye. We grew up with that kind of thing. One neighbor in the village and she watching everybody, throw an eye. But also a lot of, when that eye is thrown, we really don't know what throwing. I mean, a lot of unsavory things was also happening there. And so, one, you have to consider your child is vulnerable. Your child is vulnerable because they understand differently. They can be maneuvered and manipulated differently. Correct. Especially, again, I spoke about the power differential. So if uncle, if auntie is the one who is seen as the good person, the powerful person, the financial person, and they say to a child, hey, if you talk, you are going to be the bad one, then likely that child may not speak. And so one understanding that the child is vulnerable, but on the other hand, what do you mean by looking out for?
Well,
and too often, just let me finish. Too often, I beg your pardon?
Is it, I meant it in terms of who may have the primary care?
Oh, yeah, come into that. Yeah, come into that. Because it was a rhetorical question when I said, when you say, like, who looks out,
right?
We tend to just be in the house.
Yeah.
But we don't really be looking after the child. That is why there are so many accidents of death because of negligence in some cases, because we were not paying attention to the child or children. And also, we also found where children were.
Yes, yes.
And so when you talk about grooming, it leaves room for people to talk to your child. Now, Mickela, we have to put in the mix online.
Oh yes, I was coming up with that. That is
because online is now the new dark street. I don't want you to walk down that street because we have unsavory people on that street. It's no longer a street, it's online.
It's online, and you would say, what is a good touch and a bad touch? Now it's totally different. It is, they are coming through the screen, the tablets, the telephones, the computers, and that is something, I mean, we have to start now to tell children what those signs are. So on one hand, we have to educate the parents as well as what signs to look out for, and then also the children.
Something, Mickela, let me jump in. Just recently, I think it was about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Hello?
Yeah, I'm here with you.
About that I contributed to, and I spoke about we need to begin to teach healthy sex abuse type of things in our school. And there was a reason for that. And strange enough, you would be bringing up the same point, because it is not enough to tell parents to do it, because I work the ground. I know I've worked in all parts of the world, and it is the same. Parents in the main lack the ability to have difficult conversation with their children.
Yeah.
And that's the fact. And I mean, that's just a brutal fact. For one, shame and guilt, you don't want to talk about it because it brings about shame. Or two, you do not have the words or the way in which you can have the conversation. That is why you always hear parents saying, when they get a little old, but I always say, once you're having age-appropriate conversation, you could begin to speak to your child from one. It is about age-appropriate. Mickela, the way you will explain to a 17-year-old is going to be very different to the way you explain to 14 or help the parents to develop the acumen to speak to their children. But more importantly, this has to become part of the staple of education.
I agree with that.
We must begin to teach in school. Yeah.
Part of the curriculum, put it in the pathway.
Mental health and proper sexual health has to be part of your curriculum. Because I tell you this, Mickela, a lot of the issues that children end up stumbling into, which is sexual abuse, it happens, one, because they in the first instance, and in the second instance, they know it because of the threats that surrounds it. So if you, now I want to give you a case in point. This is a little graphic, so I apologize to the listeners and viewers. A school called me in for an 8-year-old girl, 8 years old. And the principal told me in her 30 years, she has never experienced anything like this. This child drew on the wall, drew for her friends an erected penis. 8 years old. She drew an erected penis. And she was boasting to her friends that that is her red penis. 8 years old.
What?
No, listen to me here now. One, for 8 years old to be drawing that, that means somebody has to be doing something or she's seen something. Either which way is wrong. But all the other girls had one. Because her uncle, which is a young uncle, was sexually abusing this child since she was 3 years old. Oh. She was 8 years at the time of the discovery. So she thought it to be normal. And so she held this one and was boasting. And when the girl said, no, you're not supposed to have that, that's wrong, we're gonna tell miss. And so when I came into the picture, they thought that the child was upset because she was molested. But the child was upset because you took away her red penis that she loves.
Oh, poor little...
You know the kind of work we had to do to change around that construct of the mind?
Wow.
Mickela, I am saying that to say, had these children been educated about good touch, bad touch, or not okay touch, that would have never happened. Or if it happened, Mickela, it would never have allowed to be prolonged. Because there were two things I always said in the Children's Authority. Two things. One, I would hope and pray that a child is not abused. But I am no fool, and we live in a brutal world. But the second thing, and that is where I always came down in the authority, when I talk about risk, because we can't save every child from being abused, further abuse, meaning further abuse from the abuser and further abuse of the mind. Because that child is going to grow up now but as soon as practical, we need to get in there to do what we need to do to protect that child from further abuse. It is not okay when a child is abused and continue to be abused for 10, 15 years. One more example when you talk about sexual grooming, because sexual grooming, and I wanted to, you know, when you look at it, because there was another case I dealt with, which was out of, I mean, I've dealt with so many bizarre cases. The money was not given to the child. The money was given to the mother of the child, innocently. The uncle was a rich uncle. The mother and the father was poor, so they had children. This girl began to go to this uncle for lessons from an early age, from SCA, and it never ended. So she was getting lessons all the way into CXC. I remembered when the girl had to go away on a camp, she had sex with everybody, tout le monde en bagaille. But unfortunately, for the people who are untrained, they call her whore, forgive the language. Exactly. They call her promiscuous. They call her all kind of things. And they sent her home early from the trip. And they called me in. Only to realize that this man, her uncle, would have been helping out her family. Now, the mother didn't know. Well, at least so the mother said. And the girl had to pay the price for over 10 years of sexual abuse. Because he said to her, you see your younger children, they will suffer. They will go hungry in here if you talk. And she, so children, so what I'm leading up to, Mickela, and I want parents to hear me, children communicate two ways and two ways only. Through their behavior and through their emotion. That is how they communicate. Yeah. So that girl was communicating through her behavior. She became sexualized. And that is the behavior caught up in punitive approach, that we do not take the therapeutic jurisprudence approach. My class will understand what I'm talking about. And so when I say therapeutic jurisprudence approach, that is where law meets social work. Yeah. Where law meets therapy. Correct. And we didn't help the child from that perspective. And so when you talk about sexual grooming, this has been going on since King Hatchet was a hammer. But we must become more aware of who we are, what we are, and what we tend to look for. If we do not have conversation with our children, they are at the mercies of abusers. If we do not make children aware, they are at the mercy of abusers. And as I have often said, poverty is the greatest trauma known to man. And once people are in poverty, they are inclined to remain in abusive situations because it serves the purpose, which is food. Well, according to Maslow, your hierarchy of needs.
Hierarchy of needs, yes.
I said a whole lot. I'll pause for your introduction.
I'm trying to recover. I know for a fact, and I really wanted us to talk about that whole internet situation, because it is a hunting ground for these predators, because it creates anonymity for them. I know we have this situation also in terms of family members, neighbors, and people that we know. Do you think, so we have the Children's Act, I think the last amendment would have been 2012, forgive me if I've gotten that wrong.
18. I would have been part of that, a robust set of amendment, 18 pieces.
Actually, I was in Parliament when the first one was passed, and I felt quite happy to be part of that. And I remember being part of the Joint Select Committee where we had to try and define what sexual touching was, because we didn't want fathers to not be able to hold their daughters, because if you say touching and then they be able to change their pampers or or their nappies. So it was a very big job on our hands, and I'm glad to see that it has continued. My question to you is, so we've got the Children's Act, we've got the Children's Authority. Do you think enough is being done in terms of enforcement of the law that we have to protect children and the institutions that we have? Always be done, but in terms of enforcement, because I've always complained that you could have all the laws in the world and we could go to Parliament every Friday and pass 100. If they're not enforced, nothing's going to change. I don't know what your views on that is.
I like the direction of the conversation, which is quite different to a lot of the other conversations around in the domains these days. And the reason why I like the conversation is exactly where my mind is at. You see, you have to understand child protection in a particular way. And having worked in the United States child protection system, it gave me a great understanding as to what child protection is. And you notice I keep saying child protection system. In Trinidad and Tobago, we have child protection corners or silos. We do not have a synergistic child protection system. Until we get a system that is rolling the way it ought to roll, we have failed. The Children's Authority cannot stand on its own. When I became chairman there, the first thing I recognized is that the Children's Authority was very much standing in a corner like the guard. Can't work. So you would have noticed I started to go on TV, started to meet with people up and down. I was on Power 102 so many. Because you had to build a system that is child protection. Yeah. If the leaders do not understand that child protection is a system and not an authority, then we fail. So when I talk about the system, I am speaking about the authority, which should be the leader of the system, that then trickles into the court, because you would also recognize that in tandem with the Children's Authority, the Children's Court came into being, and that's supposed to be one of the closest allies. And so the tridium, I call it the tridium, should be the Children's Authority, the police, and when I say police, they drop down to the Child Protection Unit,
correct,
right? And then the court, the Children's Court. And if three of them begin to work in a synergistic way, we will recognize that the Children's Authority protects, the Child Protection Unit prosecutes, and the court protects everybody. At least so it's supposed to work. Yeah. And so the problem we have is all these different departments, all these different agencies, but they are not speaking to each other. And that is why a national child policy became important. But you see, in this country, we like policy, we like task force, we like these things, but to operationalize it, we do not have the acumen to put it together. And so, Mickela, when you talk about in 2018, we worked tirelessly with the then Attorney General. Marvelous work we did there together with him and his team. 18 pieces of legislation. When I finished, he told me I have an honorary law degree.
Wonderful.
Because it was beautiful to hear my words read in Parliament as law. It was a beautiful thing for me to sign into law those pieces of legislation. But you see what I said to him, in the social service sector, the law cannot be stagnant. Yeah. Law must meet practice. law must meet practice because the law must evolve to meet what we meet on the ground. And that is why we propose even further amendments. And I am happy to see that the Jones report even solidify what we would have said in terms of more amendment is needed. Because you have to understand, sometimes you create a law with the good intention and the spirit, but then when the law becomes operational, you realize it is not meeting the needs. And therefore, it becomes important to consistently review protection. Because just like grooming wasn't part of the legislation, just like sexual touching wasn't part, only when you realize what was going on. Because we have not been able to really solidify oral sex as well. That is still a great point. That is still
but let me jump in briefly now. Yeah. I have to say,
not yet.
Dr. Benjamin.
Pressure.
Okay. They say entitled to honorary degree after contribution to what turned out to be legislation in this country. So that's a commendable effort, a huge feat to accomplish. So congratulations. But from what you are saying, it was inevitable for us to end up where we are. Because if you're saying it's a system that we should have on the authority supposed to play the role as the leading part of that system. And from listening to you, it is clear that that authority has not played the role so far as the head of that system. Then what we are hearing about the abuses in homes and so on, those things were inevitable because the system just isn't, has not been operationalized in the way which you have expressed it. So it's one or two things here. How come you understand what is required so thoroughly in order to protect the youngsters and those who have the resources, who lack the knowledge that you possess because you have gone through the process to have that knowledge? Why haven't they buy into to what you have shared with them and use their resources to back it in order to protect the children of this country? Why they have taken so long to protect children of this country?
A couple of things. You said a lot there. I do not know why they have not buying up because I am selling anything. I am just who I am, a humble servant of the people who know, because this is what I do. This is not, this is what I do every day. And I've been doing this. This is what my degree is. This is what my specializations are. I have 3 sub-specializations for my master's. A clinical master's, specializing in children and family, and specializing in trauma. That is what I do, right? And was very much actively involved in the system across there. And so when I speak from a place of knowing, not from a place of if, what's, or maybe. I am saying that and I keep telling my social workers and my clinicians that you always have to upskill, because the premise of child protection is ever evolving. Modus and modalities change. New theories and therapies come in. And so you always have to keep yourself moving. That is the criticality. But let me start by where you started in terms of the role of the authority and whether they have failed or is failing. The authority is quite new. So you have to be fair. The authority is a new entity. And to be further fair to the authority, it was set up to deal with 900 cases or 1,200 cases a year. In the first 9 months of the authority, they got over 4,000 cases. So from the jump, they were overwhelmed. And that never really recovered because you're flying the plane already, and you have to keep flying the plane and the fix. And then you have to have the people who know what they're doing, who could manage crises in such a way that they can protect the children and build and develop. No, in saying that, the authority cannot operate by itself, as I indicated. It's a system. And to be quite fair to the authority, you cannot put 60 years of abuse on the shoulders of the authority in 4 years to fix. That system has failed from the jump. And what they have recognized over the many years, and Mickela said she would have sat in parliament at the time, that was part of fixing the system, you know. But the synergistic approach to put it in the way it's supposed to link didn't happen. And that is the point I keep making. And I think people miss the point. It's not that we don't have what we need. We don't have people with the foresight, the vision, and the understanding to put it together in a way to make it work for our children. The school system, look, simple. The place where you get most 90% of the report of abuse takes place in a school. Why is that? Because a child spends 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, 1,000 hours an academic year in the school with somebody else who they become comfortable with. So they talk to students, they talk to teachers. 90% of the report of abuse happen in a school. Yet, Mickela and Richard, we have one social worker to 4 schools. Mm-hmm. We have one guidance counselor to 4 schools. And that could almost represent 3,000 to 4,000 people. So if we was really serious about the system of child protection, knowing that the school is where a lot of the social ills are recognized. Domestic violence, child coming to school tired every day, they're doing the homework. It's only to realize that it's bacchanal in the house. Daddy smoking weed whole day. I'll get you a story about that, right? The son come to school high, they call the police and lock up the son. He said, well, he went white, you see, because the family smoking the weed. He ain't smoke no weed. But the point is, if we are really serious about the system, then why we only have one social worker? Why in the child guidance clinic, where it is a specialized clinic to help children with mental health challenges, you have a waiting list for months? Mental health is now. You can't wait for mental health. It's like you have a septic in your foot, you will die if you don't treat it now.
Mr. Benjamin.
So, go ahead, Mickela.
Mr. Benjamin, my friend, do you think then, and I'm not, and again, when we speak about governments, we don't speak about this one, the one before that, just in general. If we needed a system in place, okay, so we set up the Children's Authority, we've got the laws there, we say that we need the police, the Child Protection Unit to be able to work on the court and the children's court, everything to be able to function as one. Do you feel that perhaps the political will isn't there? Is that part of it? Question number one. And question number two, is it perhaps very much like domestic violence and what we see happening, that these children are just not seen as serious enough or not taken seriously enough and are put on the back burner to the what is seen as more heinous crimes that are happening, and perhaps we hear about it a little bit less because of shame and all the different things that happen. Those are my 2 questions, you know, to you, because if I always look towards solutions, and if we've already got some things in place, clearly things aren't still working.
And so the first thing you talk about is the political will. I think what I have recognized is and you see, it's the stupidity of our political system that is causing real problems. Let me tell you, you see our political, this 5-year battle, is where the real problem in this country lies. Because to be fair to any government, I want the next 5 years. So after the first 2 years, your mode is I want the next 5 years. So you started to go there. So a lot of the policies are derived based on what your agenda is.
Right.
But your agenda might not be a baton that you pass to the next. And because of that, child protection can't be a 5-year chop-up thing. It has to be a system in place that will run regardless of who is in power.
Sure.
The political directorate should ensure that child protection is cemented. In my mind, there should be things that should be enshrined in laws. I don't know, you're a lawyer and you could help me understand. That should never be moved, regardless of who comes. And child protection should be one of that. There should be agencies like the Children's Authority, like the Children's Court, like the police. Those things should be funded first. And then everything else after. Because if we're really serious about what we need to do, we need to ensure that the resources are of optimum. Even though I keep making the point in the social service sector, the resources will never be enough because we will always have social ill. But if we are operating in a way, for example, people don't like when I say this. We have enough money in this country to manage the social ills. But people don't say, wow, we don't. Imagine you have one.
No, I think point. I think you're very
Richard
right.
and I agree 100%.
But let me tell you why. Let me tell you why I'm saying what I said. You have one family, they are going to 4 different ministries to get services. I mean that. You are wasting services in 4 different departments for one family. Why not have a case manager who can walk a client through so that they don't have to go to sometimes you go into therapy by 4 different people. Because again, the system not working the way it ought to work. There is no end point, Mickela and Richard, to out point. What do you consider to be a client coming into the system and a client leaving the system? Show me the process map. Show me the flow charts. Nobody could do that. Where does a client enter and where does a client leaves? We don't know that because we don't know the system. So one, when we talk about the political will, that is my answer to that. And the second thing is, you asked me about crimes against children. We have not prioritized children. We have not done so at any level. Yeah. While I can say different people, different government, different, put anecdote in place, it still did not resound to number 1. We are very reactionary like this report. Because we had one in 1997 and we had report before 1997 and we in 2022.
And we'll have another one.
Reactionary. And until we understand where we are, the importance, you see, we signing all these fancy declarations and stuff. The students find all these declarations. Right? And now get them down one day. Right? You're signing all the fancy declarations. But are we living up to those declarations? Let me tell you what hurt me.
There's so many international conventions, as many as we have. Yeah.
Listen to this. In 2017, when there was battling the Sexual Offences Act to change it to the Child Marriage Act, let me tell you how that day was supposed to go. You put on your clothes and you go to the house. The speaker come in, morning, everybody, morning. We say the prayer, the attorney, whoever come up to the microphone and lay the thing down. We would like to change Child Marriage Act so that we could protect them children. Let me tell you, half an hour, we supposed to be going to tea or dinner or lunch. That did not require all-day debate as to if it is good, bad, or indifferent. That is madness. And that tells us the fact that we have to debate whether a child should be married. And I tell people this is not a religious argument. This is not a political argument. This is an argument about the right of a child. If the fact that we have to debate that tells you the kind of people we are.
And you have outlined, and I agree with you, you have outlined that the Children Authority, it's new. Before I ask the next question, when was it established?
They came in 2015. 2015, I think they started to operate. When I was there in 2017, they were celebrating, I think, 2 or 3 so in operation. That's fairly new, 5 or 6 years. Don't quote me on it. You could go to my
I think it was on the books, so Rich and Mr. Benjamin. I think it was on the books to be established.
Correct. But
when I was there.
Okay.
But
Right. So we could say originally it has been in existence for about 5 years.
Yeah, well, no, probably about 7 years or so.
7 years. And we all could agree that protecting children should be number one concern, top priority, paramount concern. Agreed?
Agreed.
7 years after establishing this authority, we are still in a place where we are discussing abuses to children and so on. What is required as a minimum to bring the authority up to date to operate as an effective system?
Richard, you're still making the point as if, you see, I don't want to abnegate the role of the authority, but I also want the system to understand its role.
No, I'm looking at it as a system, you know, for it to operate as a system, as you said.
Right.
What is required for it to operate as that leading? Yeah.
But you see, the authority wasn't, that is my goal for the authority, to be that resounding voice that everything else flows. So Richard, in order for that to happen, you have to again do amendments. You have to again change the laws to allow the authority to do what it needs to do. You also have to ensure that the other agencies are doing what they need to do. And that was a major issue at the authority. Because you remember, the authority wasn't designed to provide...
Give us some of the example, like what the other agencies supposed to do.
For example, I know
some of the other examples here.
So let me give you the example. Place for people. That wasn't the role. So you refer them to other agencies for that services. But when you refer them to a different agency, and that agency, well, we underfunded, we don't have the manpower, we don't have the staff, we don't have the... What happens then? It's either one of two things. The authority had to do it, even though it wasn't in their legislative mandate, or the family or the child goes without. Now, hear me. So when the authority had to do it now, it means that staff who should be doing something else according to their legal mandate is now trying to do their legal mandate and everything else. That is why I keep saying the system. Everybody that surrounds child protection needs to be properly well funded to do what they need to do. Only then the Children Authority can be successful. It is also important, and when I was chair, signing memorandum of understanding with various stakeholders to ensure that there is a synergy between the agencies. Because all these agencies needed to start to talk to one another. And at the Children Authority, I was very, very happy when we signed MOUs with so many people, and we were having monthly case conferences. They were coming and talk about the cases they were working on together, because I was adamant. We had to act now. And if you are fair, you will have recognized in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, a lot of people are brought before the court for sexual offenses in real time. That is significant, in real time. I'm not meaning that in 1997, I'm talking about somebody committed an offense in January of 2022 and they are before the court now. And the reason for that is the system that working together to ensure that the child protection, the Children Authority, and all these people do what they need to do. But it needs to amp up. And the only way we can amp it up is by understanding the legislation, giving the authority the resources, but not just giving them the resources, but the people who know what to do.
So there's a lack of human and financial resources, Mr. Benjamin.
Correct. So how much is too much and how little is too little? Now, again, I'll be fair. Because my mouth loud and I always was calling the minister, the PS, we need more money. And they were trying to oblige as best as they could have. And I'm going to be fair. When I said we needed to expand the reach of the authority, because when I came in, there was a serious bottleneck. because Mount Hope was the only assessment center and part of Sando Hospital, they was borrowing a piece away. And I said, this cannot be. Why should somebody from Sangre Grande come all the way to Mount Hope? Why somebody from Icacos must come all the... So what we did is that we began to open regional centers. I saw the Prime Minister made mention of it. And I was very proud because that came out of this board. So we opened the Sangre Grande Assessment Center, the San Fernando Regional, the Chaguanas, and we opened Tobago in full. I was adamant that no child leaving Tobago to come to Trinidad full Children's Authority in Tobago. So when you talk about what did we do and to help change the system, that was a major factor. That you had somewhere in Chaguanas that all of Central could come for San Fernando. So what that did is that it opened up so that more people can receive services in a faster time. And they saw about 30% immediate reduction in backlog of cases. But
So,
you see,
Mr. Benjamin,
foresight.
Yeah. Here you have 7 years later, Minister had on her desk a report for 6 months containing the information surrounding those absolutely terrible abuses that we have read that children have been put through. And to leave the report closed for an additional 6 months left the doors open for what the report had contained in it to continue for 6 more months in actuality. What would you say about a situation like that? First up, was that a reasonable thing to do? And if it was, I would like to hear the explanation from your perspective. And if it wasn't reasonable, what action should be taken? Because you're the experts in this, and I would want to rely on your guidance here.
Well, you see, you ask me some hard questions here. Some very difficult. You're asking me to postulate.
That's why we brought you on, Mr. Benjamin, the best in this. Who else will answer them?
I will answer it this way because I wasn't there, but I will answer it this way. As a person who sat and continued to sit as the head of an organization, my organization, and sat there, we have to understand processes. Now, I could imagine not that report, horrible as it is, people think that it should have been brought forthwith, but there is a process. And I think you have to be fair to the process. Is 6 months unreasonable to understand a 400-page document, to dissect it, to understand it, and to begin to put out a process? Because it would have been ill-advised to get a report, rush to the public with it with no plan. And so the question is, what do you do as an administrator, as a minister, as a cabinet? Because to me, who gets the report, what they did with it, had to now go to somebody else, then that had to go to somebody else before it comes out. So you have to be fair all around.
Too much bureaucracy, Mr. Benjamin.
I don't know in this case if it was too much bureaucracy as opposed to, you can't just pick up a report like that and just...
I accept that, but at the same time, I don't think anything in the report, besides perhaps the details, and came as a shock to anybody of what was happening. And correct, I think there's so much staff. You didn't have as much staff. The Children's Authority may not have as much staff, and I'm going to accept that because you head that organization. But you're talking about an entire ministry, and I guess 6 months will feel like a very long time to the children who it was happening.
What I would have done, is announcement that the committee has concluded their work. We are now in possession of the report. The report is now going to a technical team, and I would have outlined, you see, again, in this country, sometimes people think that not saying, because I tell people you communicate whether you speak or not. So to me, saying that I have now received the report and these are the next steps, people would have stomached it differently for the same 6 months than now coming to the back end and saying, well, we've had it for 6 months. And then we lose focus as to the report and what is important in the report and what we have to do to now talk about, well, you had it for 6 months, what did you do?
How much longer do you think they should be given then, now that we can't go back in time? The 6 months is gone and we accept the minister is not here to answer for herself. How your expertise is therefore needed before action is credible, tangible action is taken?
Well, you see, the question is, what is this credible and tangible action? And that is my worry.
Well, the recommendations in the report.
Those recommendations have been there. I would have put those recommendations out there a long time ago, right? As a matter of fact, the Children Authority would have already began to act on some of those recommendations there in that report. Okay. And so for me, there's a task force in place doing their work, whatever that is, because I have not seen a TOR in terms of what they are supposed to do. But let me tell you this, it's a point I keep making over and over, even as chairman. For the food industry, quality of food, customer service is their risk. You have a crappy customer service and not eating here. Your food tasting bad and not coming here. For the financial industry, money and investment is their risk. And for the child protection industry, preserving lives and preserving innocence is our risk. That risk is an immediate risk.
Yeah.
This risk cannot wait. And that was one of the major challenges in the authority, you know. Everybody, we had to go through too much process, and I was one who, we have to act now. Because when you do not act now, children die. We have seen children die throughout our history, and they will continue to die until we understand that child protection is now. We need to act now. We need to do it now. So when you talk about how long again, now is the time. No, I made mention.
I wanna commend you, Mr. Benjamin, for the approach you say you would have taken. I think it would have been a plausible approach because it would have triggered a different type of reaction, as you have said. So that I have this report, its contents seem a bit heavily or extremely concerning, quite disappointing. But the report is going through. It has been actioned. We have a report, it sounds damning, but it's actioned. And from that day onwards, people could have started looking at it and we may have been in a better place by the time the 6 months would have ended. To hold it for 6 months, only to tell us that you have it for 6 months. And from the end of that 6 months to now start to put it through that process, it's saying you have delayed that process for at least a year or more, which can help the children.
You see,
I
Richard,
understand that as a professional, you may not want to say something that may come across, you know, politically incorrect. And I want to say you're right to do that. But let me take the risk.
No, I really don't care.
It was horrible. It was horrible, Mr. Benjamin. Yeah. No, I tell you, it was horrible. I support your position, but I have to speak for the children. It was absolutely horrible and unacceptable for anyone to put that report and allowed what happened to happen, which is that we were told it sat on a desk for 6 months without any form of action. That must be unacceptable in any part of the world. And in the most diplomatic and professional way. And I agree with you. I do agree with the approach that you outlined, that had you been in that position, what you would have done. If that was done, we would have been in a much better place today.
But what I must say though, I do not know, nor do you or Mickela, and I think it will be remiss of me to assume that nothing took place. I do not know if they were working in the background. I do not know
video every day on. We know over the years when something like that comes out and people say what they had to say. Once you just said, well, how you consider silence? Isn't silence a response?
It is a response.
It is a response,
And
right?
it was deafening when that report came out.
Right, and so that is
and
why
after
even
the
in
talk
my
has been around it, it's sit there for 6 months, nothing has been done. If you know that it wasn't just sitting there, that should have come out by now. Nothing has come out. So the silence is confirming the discussion in the national community. And that makes it even worse than it already is.
And Richard, you see, that is the unfortunate place of Trinidad, right? That is the unfortunate, and you would have remembered when I was at the authority, it was my business to ensure that the authority was always out and about. Because if you are not out and about, then people forget that I could have called the authority for abuse. People wouldn't know what is sexual grooming. People wouldn't know what is sexual touching. And it was my mandate. And we had good people at the authority who could come on your program and talk about these things and to have because I think it is important to communicate with people. And one of the things I've often said, good, bad, or indifferent, are coming and I'm telling you. Even if we made a mistake, I am sorry, we will fix it. I am holding this one accountable. I am accountable, but we will do what we need to do. And it is unfortunate now we are at a place where
when you make
rather
mistakes,
than focus
that's
on
an
what we
opportunity
need to do with this report,
to refine something.
I didn't hear.
I say when you make an error, that's an opportunity to refine something.
Of course.
So that you do it better. Yeah.
But
so I'm in agreement with that too, Mr. Benjamin.
We are at a place where a lot of the conversation is now around what you did for 6 months, as opposed to we have been doing this and keeping people abreast along the way. But as I said, I cannot account to whether anything was done in the background or not. But what I can tell you is how I would have dealt with the situation. But as I want to wind up here, as I take my exit, child protection is a system. Until we understand that, and until we begin to operate as a system, we will continue to fail. We will pump more money, 126 million, and we will not have anything to show for it. We must understand that unless we put children first, the vulnerable, and unless we are serious about child protection, put a social worker in every community center and in every health center. So that when mommy and daddy frustrated, they know they could go right there and talk to somebody in the community. Put social workers in the community to help them to navigate the difficulties. Churches, get social workers involved. If we're really serious about child protection, we have to begin to do the thing that, not talk it, but do it. Thank you, and may God bless you.
I want to thank you again for always being so open and direct. And I want to ask you to maintain that passion and contrite. They couldn't have a better person than you in this position to fight this cause. It is one. And I think I've been listening here. I've heard you on Fazira, I've heard you on CAC3, I've heard you on TV6 News. I think they all turned here because you have so much to communicate for people to learn from. As you make your exit, and I'll be another minute to share with our listeners, and that is, a lot of us believe we know about the dangers of sleepovers, where people come to stay over by you and all that type of thing. How is sleepovers? You know, you have your friends, your children go to sleep by people and they come, they want to bring their friends over by you. Explain to our listeners what is the danger that resides behind that wonderful, friendly gesture.
Sleepovers are not bad. I will not vilify sleepovers. Although my mother wasn't selling me a place. She said, you are going up a place, don't ask. But it's our children who are not cognizant of what it is. But you don't know who else is in the house. You have to do your due diligence. And listen to this. You have to begin to speak to your children from a non-punitive age-appropriate way that is going to give them the education that they need so that if anything is untoward, they are going to say. You need to create a safe environment so that if something happens, they can feel comfortable to say. A lot of times children do not reveal because of your reaction as a parent or guardian. Create a safe environment and other kind of abuses and be part of your children's lives. Be part of their lives in a real way.
Agreed.
If we do
Agreed.
that, we should be okay with our children.
Right. They are good things.
And it's fine, but Rich,
But the
also my
takeaway is
parents,
parents should view them
my
as well.
mother knew who my friends' parents were.
Correct.
So it wasn't that I was going to be sent over by anybody sort of blindly. What kind of life that they live? Do they have people coming in and out of their house all the time? Does my friends have any brothers? How old are the brothers? Are the brothers' friends coming over? So it's not as simple, yes, sleepovers are good or bad. You have to, like Mr. Benjamin said, take an interest in your child's life and know what's happening.
You have to be involved.
Yeah, and be involved. Thank you so much, Mr. Benjamin. It was great, and meeting you was lovely. We really appreciated it, and I learned a lot.
God bless everybody. Bye-bye.
Me too, and I think our listeners learned a
And
lot
goodbye to the
again
students.
from Mr. Benjamin.
Yes. I think
Yeah.
I'll get a little assignment on this.
Keep up the good work, Mr. Benjamin.
Okay.
Blessings, guys. Be safe. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Take care. Yes, Richard.
All right. I think I'd commend you again for a great interview.
You sure?
I think last week when I saw it, Mr. you couldn't get any better than that. But after seeing it here, Mr. Benjamin, oh my dear me.
Oh,
I mean, come on. Heading into orbit, Mickela. Wonderful, wonderful. Political leader in here is coming out. You're addressing issues in this country in the way people would expect you to. You understand them as people would expect you to, and hope that you would understand to apply should you ever get to lead the country. I still think into your week after week, the likelihood of that is becoming higher and higher on a weekly basis. Keep up the good work.
Yes.
Keep up the good work. I know we kept you over time again today.
That's okay. This was important. This
away.
was too important. I had to be here. Thank you, Rich. Have a good week. Very much.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yes, thank you to Nick.
All right.
Take care.
Thanks again. I won't ask any closing words today. We kept you over time.
And Mr.
Thanks.
Mr. Benjamin did a great job. Thank you very much, guys. See you next week.
See you next week.
Bye.
Next week.
Bye. Yes.
All right.
Yeah, Richie boy, that was fantastic. Trust me.
Nadia, I know we didn't take the news today. I don't know if you're going to run it now.
No, we skipped the news for today, so I'll just play some music and take a short break and